Okay, so the next thing you want to do is cut up your cake. Go ahead and cut out a rectangle shape. You want to go ahead and cut off the edges too, just in case they're uneven or darker, like mine was. Oops, tore it a little bit. Okay, so next you want to divide it into thirds. At least I am. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 different kinds. So, okay, and then for every piece, or for every type of petit four you're going to make, you want to have 2 layers because you're going to stack them on top of each other. So then you want to go ahead and cut it in half. Okay. Now you want to go back and make sure that every piece can fit on top of each other. So this looks good. This one's a little bit smaller than the bottom layer, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and trim it off. Same thing for this one. So what you're doing is you're just trying to create as identical pieces as possible. Okay, we don't really need this piece of parchment paper anymore. And as you can see, it's a pretty dense cake. It's a little crumbly, probably because I may have underbaked mine a little bit. But it's okay, it's less crumbly than some other cakes would be. Okay, so now that you have all your pieces for your petit fours, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and fill them. So you can fill them with pretty much any filling that you like. I'm going to fill them with 3 different fillings. This is some leftover buttercream that I have, some vanilla buttercream. And you just want to spread a very thin layer. You don't want anything too thick. This is really more supposed to be a glue than a filling. Now I had this vanilla buttercream in the refrigerator from a cake I just recently iced, and when I brought it to room temperature, it separated and it was just very almost curdy. It looked broken would be a good word to describe it. If you know what I'm talking about, you've seen it. All I did was I put it on the mixer and I just whipped it like crazy until it came back together. It'll come back together eventually, just keep whipping it. So, yes, basically the point is, yes, you can keep buttercream in a refrigerator and save it for later. Okay, put the next layer on top. And the same thing here. You want to make sure, first you want to make sure that your pieces are lined up precisely. Make sure there's no filling oozing out. And then you just want to put a nice thin layer on top. And this is going to be a glue as well, even thinner than the one in the middle. And what we're doing is we're creating a glue for the marzipan. And the reason we use marzipan in this recipe or in this petit four preparation is that the marzipan provides a very smooth top for our petit fours. And it also is I guess impermeable is a word, like it won't absorb any liquid or anything like that. So the fondant will sit right on top. It won't get ripply or anything like that. You could probably put a little bit more on since we were a little thinner on the inside. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing for the other two pieces, except one is going to be Nutella and one is going to be strawberry jam. So really you can use any filling that you want. So when we come back, I'll have all of them covered. Okay, so next we're going to go ahead and roll out our marzipan. And the easiest way I find, or I've been taught how to roll out marzipan, is actually within a plastic bag. Okay, so knead your marzipan a little bit before rolling it out. Now all marzipan is it's basically an almond filling, just like almond paste. It's actually made from almond paste, powdered sugar, glucose, and basically what marzipan is commonly used for is for edible cake decorations. Fancy carrot cakes will have a marzipan carrot on top because you can dye marzipan. This is actually a fairly light colored marzipan. Sometimes marzipan can be a little bit darker. And but so this will take to color very well, and you can color it orange, any color you want. Okay, so after kneading it for a bit to soften it up, place it inside a plastic bag, flatten it down, and then just roll it out. I'm going to use a little bit bigger of a rolling pin. Now remember, you want to roll it out to be a rectangle because you're going to put it on top of the petit four or the frangipane. And you don't want a real thick piece, so roll it out as thin as you can. Okay. So go ahead and place this on top. And then using a sharp paring knife, go ahead and cut it down to the shape of the frangipane. So go ahead and cover the rest of your pieces of frangipane with fondant, and we'll come back and we'll cut them and then we'll glaze them. Okay, so now that we've got our marzipan on top of all of our frangipane, go ahead and now if you want to be really precise, you can use a ruler. I'm just going to eyeball it because it doesn't really matter that much to me since this is just for, you know, myself. But cut about approximately 1 inch by 1 inch cubes. Make sure to clean your knife in between each cut. That way you don't get crumbs and icing on top of your marzipan layer, if you can help it. Okay, so go ahead and finish cutting all of your petit fours out. So you should probably get about 12 to 16 per piece, at least I will. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now that we have all of our petit fours cut up, and as you can see, I have all kinds of crazy shapes. They're all supposed to be 1 by 1 inch squares, but I didn't really use a ruler. So if you want to have really professional, really precise looking petit fours, make sure you use a ruler. Now, what you want to do is you want to have a very clean sheet pan and a very clean cooling rack, preferably something like with a grid or something that the petit fours will be able to sit on. Because what you're going to do is you're going to glaze on this rack. So go ahead and place your petit fours on this rack. Give them some space, about maybe an inch to half an inch of space in between. And while you're doing this, you want to have a double boiler getting ready to boil on the stove. So, a pot with some water boiling, and then have your icing fondant, your glazing fondant, whatever you're calling it, in a bowl ready to be put in a double boiler. So when we come back, we'll be at the double boiler. So go ahead and put your petit fours on your sheet pan, on your glazing rack, and then we'll go ahead and start warming up our fondant. Okay, so we have a pot of water boiling. It's maybe like an inch or two of water. So we're going to go ahead and turn this way, way, way down to simmer, or almost off really, if you want. Then put your glazing fondant on top. Go ahead and stir it to break it up and start the melting process. And you want to be careful. Most fondants will lose their shininess if you heat it over 100 degrees. Now, it depends on the quality of the icing fondant, of course, but that's typically a standard. So heat it as close to 100 degrees as you can without going over. If you go over, it's okay. Not a huge deal. It just won't be as shiny. And what you want to do is you want to transfer this to a smaller pot, or a smaller bowl. Be careful not to get any of the water from the water bath. So you just want to be careful not to get any water from the water bath into the icing. Okay, and to glaze, what you're going to do is use both hands. I'm going to use one so you guys can see. And start pouring the glaze. And just go down like that. Try to go as evenly as you can. This fondant has a couple chunks in it, so it's not so nice. Try to coat them as best as you can. Go over to the vanilla ones. Okay, so I'm not going to have enough fondant to do all of the petit fours as I wanted them to do, but what I have covered is what I have covered. Now, as you can see, I did miss some pockets here and there. It's been a while since I've done these, so excuse me, but as you can see, they're pretty much well covered, and just make sure to adjust your speed of pouring it as you're going, so that way you can make sure that you're covering it as best as you can. Hopefully, your first ones will look kind of rough, but usually your last ones will look a little bit better, depending on the circumstances. So go ahead and glaze all your petit fours. Then what you want to do is you want them to really set up. So give them a long time to dry and set up, and then we'll go ahead and decorate them.